A huge common misconception that I see a lot in the My Hero Academia fandom is that Bakugo's character development never really progresses in the series. It's always the same argument too. Bakugo has amazing character development one chapter, and then the next he's back to who he was when we first met him back in chapter 1. All because he yells a snappy comeback at someone, which just isn't true, and when I hear people say this, it just makes me think we have been reading two completely different mangas. But I think what people don't really understand about Bakugo is his personality and the development he went through throughout the series. You see, Bakugo at the start of the series has this crazy superiority complex about himself since he has this super awesome quirk. It's made pretty apparent that this is the case since he thinks he's the main character and that everyone around him are just mere extras. Not only that, but he doesn't hold back when it comes to speaking his mind to people and can be a real jerk by dismissing how someone might feel when saying those things to them, especially when it comes to Deku, but don't worry, I'll get to Deku later. Needless to say, he was a big bully that also had a lot of charm in the way of how passionate he was when it came to him going to reach his goal of being the #1 hero no matter who got in his way. You either loved to hate him or you just flat out hated him as a character. I mean, the dude after the first popularity poll always managed to beat out everyone and make it to that #1 spot. So clearly his personality and his drive for becoming the #1 hero is what drew people to him and made him loved by many. So how did Bakugo get like this to begin with? Because as the old saying goes, no one is inherently born bad. For one, let's take a look at his past and see why Bakugo acts the way he does in the first place. A great place to start would be when he first got his quirk Explosion back when he was 4 years old. Now, a child receiving their quirk at 4 is quite normal in the My Hero world. Hell, 80% of the world's population has a quirk. But as said in the beginning of the series, people aren't born equal. Some are born with no quirks, some are born with trash/boring quirks, and others are born with amazing/flashy quirks. For Bakugo, he fell under the amazing quirks category. Upon first manifesting his quirk, he was immediately showered with praise on how cool and awesome his quirk was and how he was going to achieve greatness because of it. A neat thing that Bakugo's mom points out about Bakugo when we are first introduced to her, which don't worry, I'll get to her in a bit, is that throughout Bakugo's whole life, people have made a fuss about him, praising him for every little thing he does. And to shower a young and very impressionable kid with an infinite amount of praise for having something cool that no one else has is really bad. It also didn't help that he was getting praised for just naturally being good at doing almost anything. The kid is a prodigy, and there is inherently nothing wrong with being a prodigy, but Bakugo severely lacked humility. Not only did all of this praise give a young Bakugo a massive ego on how his quirk is better than anyone else's, he ended up forming a massive superiority complex about himself and his quirk and the greatness he would achieve from it, where he ended up viewing everyone around him as just mere extras, looking down on everyone, including those he would end up training and fighting alongside with at UA, making him not a team player. To really put the icing on the cake here, his home life doesn't look to be all that great either. And no, I'm not saying anything like he was abused or anything like that. When we first meet Bakugo's parents, it's pretty apparent that he gets his personality from his mother. I mean, her introduction literally starts with her slapping the shit out of the back of Bakugo's head and then telling him that it's his fault to begin with for being so weak, which she was referring to him getting kidnapped and All Might going into retirement. And as we know, this was something that Bakugo at the time was super self-conscious about, which put him through a lot of pain. Just like Bakugo, his mom does the same thing in yelling at people, not holding back when it comes to speaking her mind, and can be a real jerk by dismissing how someone might feel when saying those things to them in that moment. Bakugo is just as snappy and aggressive as his mother mother. And Bakugo's most infamous moment of doing such a thing, where his personality and ego are combined, would come from the first chapter and episode of the manga and anime respectively, where he would tell Deku that if he were to ever hope to have a quirk, that maybe he should jump off of a building and pray that he gets one in his next life. With all that said, it's clear that Bakugo became a product of his environment, with his personality that he gained from his mother mixing in with the massive ego and narcissism that he formed from all of the praise he received his whole life, causing him to be that bully we see in the first episode and chapter, which is why I find his and Deku's relationship to be so special in the series, because Deku was the first person who really humbled Bakugo in a big way, which really turned his superiority complex into hyperdrive mode, but it's what also eventually ended this side of him. You see, Bakugo, since receiving his quirk, had always looked down on Deku for being quirkless. He always felt like Deku was supposed to be beneath him because of it, due to all of that praise he was getting for it, making him feel like he was better and stronger than anyone. But when a young Kacchan fell into the river, a young quirkless Deku ran to extend a helping hand to his friend. Deku never really treated Bakugo like he was any different because of his quirk. So when Deku went to go help Bakugo, Bakugo took it as an insult and that Deku had been looking down on him the whole time. How could someone so weak and quirkless feel the need to help someone significantly stronger who has a quirk? Deku's spirit and wanting to help and save people through the way he looked up to All Might, a hero who they both looked up to when growing up, is what always made Bakugo feel like Deku was above him, and he hated that. Deku loved the aspect of All Might saving people with a smile that always made it seem like no matter how dire the situation might be, it was going to be okay because he was there. And Bakugo loved the aspect of All Might always winning and beating the villain no matter the circumstances, thus saving the day. Bakugo just couldn't accept Deku for the way he was, because you can't win by saving people. So since then, he kept Deku at arm's length, being mean to him, trying to act superior by rejecting Deku, but in the end, Bakugo kept losing that fight. Since they got into UA, nothing's worked out how Bakugo thought it would. All of those expectations he had received from all of that praise came crashing down hard. And I don't think I need to go into detail about everything that didn't go his way, but I will list these events off. We have him losing the battle training against Deku, the sports festival where he realized that he shouldn't underestimate his opponent, but also lost to Deku in the sense that he couldn't make Todoroki go all out using his fire side on him like he had done the match prior with Deku. Then we have him forced to put his pride aside to team up with Deku in the final exams to beat All Might, getting kidnapped by the League, making him feel like he was weak and caused All Might's retirement, failing to get his hero license and falling behind the rest of the class, including Deku, learning the truth about Deku and All Might and getting the iconic save and win, win and save speech from All Might. All of that greatness that he was expecting from all of the praise he had received was crushed little by little through each of these events. Every time Bakugo kept falling behind those he had looked down on, and even worse, Deku, a person who he had always looked down on, being ahead of him, the more and more Bakugo got to realize his own weaknesses as well as Deku's strengths, which slowly destroyed his ego and pride, thus making him see how wrong he was about Deku and his views. From the beginning of My Hero Academia, we see Bakugo go from telling Deku to jump off of a building to not wanting anything to do with Deku and anyone else, to helping Deku master One for All, sacrificing himself to save Deku, and even apologizing to Deku for everything he's done to him throughout their life together. At the time of Bakugo's apology, he states that this past year forced me to understand your strength and my weakness. By this point in the series, Bakugo has gained the humility that he was missing when we were first introduced to him way back in chapter 1. He not only is a lot more cooperative with his classmates, especially Deku, but he no longer looks down on those around him. Bakugo even addresses Deku by his actual name, Izuku, during the apology, all while having that same drive to become the #1 hero that he did in the beginning of the series, but now with him viewing his classmates as all of his rivals when it comes to aiming to be #1. Bakugo's personal journey throughout the series series has been to make him realize that he isn't this superior being that everyone in his life has made him out to be. Bakugo's hero journey throughout the series was that yes, in order to win, you do have to save people. What makes his overall journey one of the most realistic I've seen in the series, however, is that this change didn't come from just one arc or one event that made him instantly switch his views, but it took practically the whole series for him to change his views on things. And though Bakugo has gone through some incredible character development, changing as a person as well as a hero, one thing still remained from him, which was his personality and the way he talked. Like I said earlier, Bakugo is a product of his environment. When someone like Bakugo has the personality of the type of person he's been raised by, plus all of that praise for his abilities causing such a massive ego, then having those two traits about him mesh together, giving us this person that we see in the beginning of the series, that mental transition doesn't happen right then and there when he goes through all of that life-changing development, nor does it come with the clarity on how he should talk to people. In the world of My Hero Academia, only a year has passed since him and Deku both got into UA, and all of these life-changing events started happening, and slowly, due to his pridefulness and massive ego, over the course of many arcs, he was finally able to see his own flaws and become a better person and hero because of it. Now, just because his views on certain things about himself and others has changed, that doesn't mean his whole aggressive personality goes and changes with it. This and the complaints by the fandom of Bakugo never changing as a character is acknowledged by Horikoshi through his characters in just a few chapters after Bakugo finally apologized to Deku, where in chapter 327, Bakugo yells at the guys for throwing a filthy Deku in the bath and not having him scrub off the filth first, which, by the way, yes, that is nasty, so I can definitely understand where Bakugo is coming from. Here, Tokoyami says, even after the grand apology, alas, nothing has changed, with Sugar Man following up by saying, try to be better, man. Be better. Then Bakugo cuts him off by splashing water in their face. Now, doesn't this kind of seem familiar? It's almost as if Horikoshi is Bakugo and Tokoyami and Sugar Man are some of the fan base in this moment. After the splash of water, Bakugo then states that they are all his rivals in the aim to be number one. Thus, Horikoshi is showing us that though his snappy personality through his comebacks still remains, Bakugo indeed has changed in many different ways. Also, side note, I think it was really funny how even after that chapter had been released, people still were saying Bakugo hadn't changed and that Horikoshi acknowledged that he knows Bakugo hasn't changed. The message really flew over people's heads. But back to what I was saying. Bakugo is a character that when you watch closely, you can see that his actions speak louder about his character than what any of his outbursts might have you think is saying about him. If I'm going to be honest, I love this about Bakugo. It's just so real to me. Yes, I think the outbursts and the way he describes things in his aggressive, snappy, and no-chill manner is funny. I mean, that's how it's portrayed in the manga for the most part. But it also has me very interested in where Horikoshi will go with this side of Bakugo in the future. Bakugo still is a teenager after all, and is still growing as time goes on, and so will his personality and overall character development. With that said, Bakugo has come a long way since chapter 1. There should be no question about it. He went from being a bully who looked down on everyone, which made it hard to believe that this guy of all people would end up becoming a hero instead of a villain, to this person and hero who has shaped up to be this all-around amazing and complex character that you can look at as not only being a worthy rival and friend to Deku and the others, but also as an outstanding top pro hero. Now that's all I have for today's video. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on this video, as well as how you feel about Bakugo in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching this little character analysis video on Bakugo about understanding his character development in the series. I'm going to do more types of videos like this in the future, with my next look at a character most likely being Todoroki and his childhood trauma. So if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to Detroit, smash that like button below, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Doing all of that greatly helps the channel. And if you are new to the channel and you like My Hero Academia content, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, as well as hitting that notification bell to join the Kitoroki Hero Academia to become my hero. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.